Okay. I commit my body, mind, and spirit
I commit my body, mind, and spirit
to the protection, defense, and security
to the protection, defense, and security
of the red, the black, and green.
of the red,
black, and green.
I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa
I
Dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa
and the liberation of her scattered Black children.
and the
liberation of her scattered Black children.
I accept for myself and my descendants
I accept
for myself and my descendants
the teachings of universal African nationalism
the teachings of
universal African nationalism.
and I promise that our children will be instilled
and I promise
that our children will be instilled
with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people.
with the purpose
and knowledge of themselves as African people.
In order that the cause of our struggle will neither falter nor fail.
in order
that the cause of our struggle will
neither falter nor fail
Until all Black people are free and united.
until all Black people are free and united
Through one God.
through one God,
One aim.
one aim,
And one destiny.
one destiny.
Race first.
Race first.
Okay, got the pledge. Next thing we do is ground rules. Let me share screen on this. So conference call ground rules. Number one, always have a pen and paper available to take notes and write down member contact information. Number two, please keep your phone on mute when you do not have the floor. Number three, be respectful of the persons who have the floor by not interrupting. Number four, if you have a question or comment while someone is talking, write it down instead of cutting the person off. Then later you can voice your concerns. Number five, be mindful of the allotted time when you have the floor. If the meeting facilitator requests that everyone speaks for only 3 minutes, please try not to go over 3 minutes. Number six, we will not always agree, but we must be respectful of each other's opinions. If you cannot state your opinion in an adult-like manner, please keep it to yourself. Number seven, do not direct any profane words at your CBPM or UNIA brothers and sisters. Number eight, for safety reasons, ladies, do not give out your phone number during your conference calls. Instead, give out your email address, website, or business number. Number nine, please refrain from using the N-word. And number 10, have fun. So those are ground rules. Next, I will go over, I got to pull up the conference line. I'm gonna do the roll call. So for roll call on the conference line, we have CBPM member 2,838 for the AC in Charleston, South Carolina. We have UNI member 424, Brother Sean out of Baker, Louisiana. And that is our members on the conference line. On the Zoom, we have myself, Brother John, member number 306, president of Division 421. We have UNI member 165, the Legal Defense Committee coordinator for Division 421, Attorney Imhotep. We have UNI member 172, Dr. Shams out of New York. We have UNI member number 2, previous president and current treasurer of Division 421, President Ross Marvin. We have UNI member 390, our first vice president for Division 421, Brother Omasius. We have UNI member out of Virginia, Brother Art. And just one spark, what's your name and where you calling in from? Just one spark. Just One Spark. Are you there? Okay.
Yes. Hey, greetings. Race first, family.
Hold on. Just One Spark. Go ahead.
Hey, greetings. Race first.
What's your name? Where you
This
calling
is
from?
brother Stephen out of Chicago, Illinois.
Brother Biko.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Give me 1 second. I'll get your number. Number 97, Brother Stephen. Okay, I got you. Thank you, Brother Stephen.
All right, race first.
Race first. Brother Michael G. Harris just joined, and Brother Sundiata also just joined. So that makes 9 on the Zoom and then 2 on the conference line. Today, we were, per the agenda, we were going to go over membership department, which is a critical aspect of the UNIA. We'll have to push that meeting out because I wanted to focus on officers training and education. Training and education go hand in hand from what I've learned from Garvey's teaching. So September is a special month. You'll see why when we get into the course of African philosophy, but this is the month that Garvey would teach his course of African philosophy, his training for the UNIA leaders to carry on the legacy after his passing. So we're at the end of September, but we're going to start our officers training this coming Tuesday. And I wanted to stress the importance of this training. And to do that, I wanted to go to the UNIA-ACL Constitution. There's a section, Article 6, there's a section called Qualifications for High and Divisional Office. And I'll read the original constitutional section, and then I'll read the amended version, and we'll talk about the differences briefly. So the original Constitution stated, as far as the qualifications for high office, so these are President General, Assistant President General, Counsel General, Auditor General, Minister of Legions, all high offices in the UNIA had a level of qualifications attached to it. So Section 2 states, the qualifications of candidates for high office of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League and for candidates for divisional offices shall be as follows. Registered active membership with all dues paid up, shall be Negro, shall be proven to be conscientious to the cause of racial uplift. He shall not be married to anyone of alien race, shall be free from criminal conviction, shall be of reputable moral standing and good education, and shall undergo a 6 months course of instruction at any university of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and that only when the student graduates that he or she be allowed to represent the organization, and for a correspondence course of 1 year shall be established for the same purpose, and this course shall be extended to all persons of the race who desire to take it. So that's the original qualifications for high and divisional office. Amendments made in 2005 changed that to the following. The qualifications of candidates for high office of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League and for candidates for divisional office shall be as follows. Registered active membership with all dues paid up, shall be African, shall be proven to be conscientious to the cause of racial uplift, shall not be married to anyone of alien race, shall be free from criminal conviction, shall be of reputable moral standing and good education. Candidates for high executive office of the UNIA should have a minimum of 2 years of good service at the divisional level. So the changes that were made from, I believe this was 1939, this was last amendment, and then 2005, it was updated. Changes that were made, one is the use of the word Negro. So shall be a Negro was changed to shall be an African, which is straightforward, it's an update. But the change that I'm concerned about is so previously there was a requirement that officials undergo a 6-month course of education at any university of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and they had to graduate before they could be allowed to represent the organization. As of 2005, that requirement has been removed, and now the only requirement is that so in order to qualify to be the president general, or to sit in the seat of Garvey, you only have to have 2 years of good service at the divisional level. So that doesn't mean you have to be an officer. You don't have to undergo any rites of passage. You just have to be an active dues paying member for 2 years. And that would only be what, $56 plus $46. That's what, $102. So with $102 in good behavior, that qualifies you to the highest office in the UNIA-ACL based on the recent updates. And that's something that personally I disagree with. When we as UNIA, as Division 421, and as officers of Division 421, when we look at some of the issues that we have in the UNIA and on a leadership level, even within Division 421 and the parent body as well, or in other divisions, a lot of the issues come down to a lack of qualifications. People are in positions of power or influence, and the people that they are in power of don't really know how that person got to that place, and they don't always seem to hold the qualifications or characteristics of leadership. So we are not the UNIA-ACL parent body, but we are Division 421. We don't set the standards for what's acceptable on the parent body level or within any other division, but we do have the right to determine what's acceptable within our own division. So within our division, we are enforcing the requirement for a 6-month course of instruction in order to consider yourself a representative of the UNIA here in Atlanta. So I wanted to start there, is the Constitution and the amendments to the Constitution, and a little bit of a disagreement personally. Now with that, I wanted to go straight into what we consider to be the course of training. Let's see. Message to the people. So what we have determined and created over the years is a course. Well, it comes from Marcus Garvey, Message to the People, Course of African Philosophy. But over the past year, we've been able to condense this course into a 6-month course of instruction. And again, we'll start that this coming Tuesday. And we have to think, from an instruction, education level, training level. We talk about self-reliance and self-governance. Where is the institution that's teaching these principles? Throughout the United States, we're 100 years after the establishment of the government, but we have to ask ourselves, where are these institutions? And as Garvey said, we claim to be Garveyites and we claim to be followers of Garvey. But when Garvey looked around the world and he had the famous question of where's the black man's kings and queens, Army, Navy, men of high affairs, and he couldn't find them, he declared that he would make them. So if we can't find these institutions that are creating our future leaders, then we should be creating those institutions. That's the point. If we are serious about Garveyism, at least from my understanding of Garveyism. People may have a different understanding or a different interpretation, but from my understanding of Garveyism, it comes down to we have to be able to look out into the world and find out what it is that we need as a race. And if what we need is not there, then we have an obligation to create it. So tonight, I just wanted to go an introduction. So we're going to go over the foreword, and the preface of Message to the People, Course of African Philosophy. And some of the questions that we will get answered through this course, some of the questions I want you to think about, or and the officers have to think about, and things that we have to know. When it comes to when we go out into the world and we say we are members of UNIA-ACL Division 421, we represent the modern day legacy of Marcus Garvey. We should be able to answer some fundamental questions. Some of these questions include, but are not limited to, how many aims and objectives are there in the UNIA? If we're officers, if we're leaders, that's fundamental. We should know, even if we don't know all of the aims and objectives by heart, we should know how many there are. This text explains what members of the UNIA was the quote unquote course of African philosophy created for. So as we read this, and as you read any book or text, you should know who that text was written for. A lot of, and Garvey kind of mentions that a lot of the text and information that individuals and races put out is not meant for our benefit. But we should know who this text was written for. Number 3, what branch or division of the UNIA was responsible for establishing training departments? So whose job or whose responsibility is it to make sure the leaders and the Africans within our jurisdiction that aspire to be leaders, whose job is it to make sure that these individuals are trained? Name of the UNIA school established in Claremont, Virginia, 1926. That's just additional bonus information. What year was the first School of African Philosophy taught? That's important. How many students were in the first class of African philosophy? We should know who these individuals are. There's a lot of people that claim to be students of Garvey or the continuation of the legacy of Garvey, but when it comes down to the primary source, Garvey himself, and when he tells us who he taught, we have to be able to compare these names to the information that our leader gave us. How many of these students that went through the course went on to become president generals, hold the highest office of the UNIA? Who are the students that became president generals? Which student was the leader of the first class, which scored the highest grade? Why was the best student hesitant to enroll in the course? So there was a student that ended up being the best student, but before they went through the course, they expressed some hesitancy. And it's important for us to understand that as well, because we still have that issue today. What was the schedule of the course taught by Garvey? How many days and how often per day? So that lets us know how serious this information was to our ancestors at this time and the sacrifices they were willing to make to acquire this information. Who was appointed the authentic historian of the life and works of the Honorable Marcus Garvey, and who appointed him? Very important question. You see a lot of information about Garvey, a lot of tales and a lot of opinions, but are these opinions certified, so to speak? Garvey is about power and rights. And I would ask, who gave these individuals the right to tell Garvey's story? And Message to the People, Course of African Philosophy actually lists individuals who were given the right to tell this story. Number 13, who owns the Course of African Philosophy? This is a course. It's not just a book, but it's a course of training, a course of development. Who owns it? Who is it for? Preface. What compilation of work is considered the closest thing to a book that Marcus Garvey ever wrote? There's a lot of Garvey text literature out there. Message to the People, Philosophies and Opinions, Race First is a lot of Garvey information. The poetical works of Garvey. I think John Henry Clark and Amy Jocks Garvey also put together a text, but we got to ask ourselves, again, primary sources. How many books did Garvey himself write? It's wonderful to get secondary, tertiary information, but I'm a primary source type of person. And I believe that the primary source will always override secondary or tertiary sources. Number two, what does the course of African philosophy represent in the editor's opinion? What does this text mean to us as individuals? The years of Garvey's birth and death, and the exact dates, if you serious Garveyite, years that Garvey was in the United States. This is an important question. The legacy of Garveyism is very powerful, and it deserves much recognition and respect. But we also have to understand the amount of time that Garvey was actually in the United States. It's been, like I said, it's been over 100 years since the establishment of the government, but we have to look at what we've been able to accomplish in that time and what Garvey was able to accomplish in his time in the United States. When and where was the UNIA founded as an organization? How does the editor describe what the course of African philosophy is? So again, this is not a book, but this is a training course, and we should understand, we should understand the insight of the author as well as the editor and the message they're trying to convey. What is the immediate purpose of the course of African philosophy? Another good question. But no, I'm going to just finish this because it's only a few more. But these are things to think about as we go through the preface and the foreword. What was the requirement to pass the courses taught by Garvey? What did our ancestors have to do in order to receive certification to say, from Garvey himself, to say that this individual is ready to represent the UNIA and carry on the message of the UNIA? What did these individuals have to do? How many lessons and or subjects were there in total? And what is the difference in the type of lessons? So we'll touch on that a little bit, but it's important to know how many lessons there were and how many lessons were documented. Garvey's beliefs about the course. So what did Garvey believe about this course? How has the white man built up his system of superiority? So Garvey gives his opinion on, or is it Charles L. James? But someone in the introduction gives their opinion. Well, no, I think they pull it from Garvey's words. So it's Garvey's opinion on how the white man has built up his system of superiority. What was Garvey's view on Karl Marx and communism? That was the dominant challenging political view of the time. What is Garvey's views on Jews? What was Garvey's position on the majority of Negroes? How did Garvey feel about the majority of Negroes? Last couple, these are exposed, but y'all may forget them anyway. When was the second class taught and how many graduates? Second class was taught in 1938 with 7 graduates. What was the original intent of Garvey's trip in 1916? When was the School of African Philosophy agreed upon by the UNIA, and what were the circumstances? What rules the world and what carries the burden? What was the first education? What was the first education endeavor that Garvey himself was able to conduct from start to finish? And what were Garvey's 2 quotes to the people in Detroit in 1937? All right, with that, let me jump straight into the course. So again, this is Message to the People, Course of African Philosophy, edited by Tony Martin, foreword by Honorable Charles L. James. This version is from the new Marcus Garvey Library, number 7. There are different versions out there. This is the one that we hold to highest regard. So this is the legitimate official course of African philosophy. So any other renditions or versions, be careful. That's all I'll say. Not to say that there's not good information in there, but it may not be exactly what is being presented tonight. So foreword was written by the Honorable Charles L. James, President General President General of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. He says, in keeping with the constitutional provision and the aims and objects of the Universal Negro Improvement Association to establish schools and colleges for the racial education of our race, the founder and first President General of the UNIA, Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, made several attempts to educate some and re-educate others who would be charged with the responsibility of leadership in the UNIA. Really quick. Well, all right, that's why we talk about aims and objects. We have it's a implied understanding of the aims and objects, but in the aims and objects of the UNIA, I believe it's number 9. It talks about the importance of us establishing our own institutions for education, and being able to counter the education that we receive from white society or any other racial society with an education from our own African people that teaches us to be proud of our history. But that's what Charles L. James is referring to here when he talks about based on the aims and objects. We as Garveyites have a responsibility to educate and train those that will be charged with responsibility of leadership in the UNIA. He sincerely felt that no one should be held responsible for his actions until he or she is educated or trained to perform those responsibilities. And since the UNIA had become the largest responsible movement in racial history, its leadership should be thoroughly informed so that the proper information would be dispensed. Marcus Garvey was a man of vision, therefore his students had to be visionaries. But important statement, no one should be held responsible for his actions unless he or she is educated or trained to perform those responsibilities. Again, I ask, where is the institution that is training and educating the future leaders of our race? And if we can't find it, we have an obligation to make it. And that's what we're trying to do here at 421. In every branch of the association, training departments were established. This included military training, training for nurses, and programs for juveniles. We recall that under his direction, a university was established at Claremont, Virginia in 1926. Smallwood Quarry Industrial Institute was renamed the Universal Liberty University. Students came from various sections to enroll in this first venture. Your humble servant was one of the first trustees. The success or failure of this great educational attempt is a matter of history. But one thing to pull from here, in every branch of the association, training departments were established. So we as a chapter of the UNIA have a responsibility to establish a training department. And that's what we've done. Many attempts were aborted, but the idea lived on through forums, mass meetings, group discussions, lectures, books, and pamphlets. Mr. Garvey's speeches were widely circulated for the racial education and culture of the people. I'm not sure if this is talking about philosophies and opinions, but basically it's talking about the fact that a lot of Garvey's teachings were already being circulated. But I would assume that there's a level of misunderstanding in what is being received, and that was the purpose of putting the course together, to make things clear. In 1937, after an extensive European tour and the establishment of the parent body in London, England, the founder called a regional conference at 355 College Street, Toronto, Canada. At this conclave, he selected the following officers of divisions who, in his judgment, qualified to give him the nucleus of creating what he proudly named, quote, the School of African Philosophy, end quote. Students of the first class were as follows: Arthur Clement Moore of Toronto, Canada; Charles Linnell James of Gary, Indiana; James R. Stewart, Cleveland, Ohio; Thomas W. Harvey, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania; Nathaniel Grissom, Chicago, Illinois; Sarah Richardson Isaacs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania; Ethel Waddell, Chicago, Illinois; Eleanor White, Chicago, Illinois; Teresa E. Young, Cincinnati, Ohio; and Abraham R. Roberts of Toronto, Canada. As the names were called, I had the qualifications, but my ego told me that I had been an office boy in the parent body. I had shined Mr. Garvey's shoes. I had traveled short distances with him. I had heard all of his speeches since 1932. I had attended all conventions since that time. I had visited him in prison, and I had become the youngest vice president of the famous New York local with over 40,000 members. I had been appointed by him president of the Newark division and state commissioner of New Jersey. And now as president of the Gary, Indiana division, I felt that I had knew it all and that Mr. Garvey's time could be better spent on someone else. To my surprise, I had the rudest awakening of my life. So this is the words of Charles L. James, but he put it bluntly. He said his ego got in the way. He felt that he knew enough and he didn't need to submit to a course of African philosophy, and that Garvey's time would be better spent with other individuals. But this is a reminder for us as officers. We have to humble ourselves. We don't know. Garvey has a quote in the next paragraph, but he says you don't know because you haven't been taught, because he hasn't taught us. So unless we've sat through this course from a person that has been taught by Garvey through the lineage, I would argue that we really don't know. And I'll tell you why we really don't know later on. Mr. Garvey shocked me. He said publicly, quote, "James, you don't know. I know that you don't know because I have not taught you, and you will take the course of African philosophy so that when you say, I know, you will know that you know because you will have been taught by me," end quote. My brother calling me. You will know from then on, there was no question. I enlisted for the duration. So in order to be able to say that you know, and you know because you've been taught by Garvey, Garvey recommended the individuals go through this course. The class became one family. We ate together, roomed together, studied together, recognizing the professor as the chief architect of our intellectual destiny. As for me, it was a dose of humility mixed with the yearnings for knowledge. For 30 days and nights, with 2 sessions per day, mass meetings at 8:00 p.m., studying until the early morning hours, we had no time for anything else but study, study, study. Then finally came graduation. Let the record show that I received the highest grade. In every point of examination, I was graded an E. My classmates all agreed that I was the leader of the first class in the School of African Philosophy. We were charged with guarding the written course with our lives. The unwritten course was also to be engraved on the tablets of our memory. As I write this foreword, I am sorry to announce that all of my classmates of the first class have joined with the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey and our other ancestors. With all our human frailties, I am convinced that this first class had not failed our teacher and that we have been a shining example to those who come after us. So the sacrifice that our ancestors were able to make, 30 days and nights, 2 sessions per day, studying all day, all night, but 30 days straight. Charles L. James was the highest performing student. And he was the last survivor of the course. He says, this course is ours. But I question, when he says ours, who is he talking about? And that's a question for UNIA leaders, obviously, but we got to define that. Whatever is written, distorted, or injected by unauthorized persons using devices other than the proper way that was given to us by the founder and applying the benefits to their own personal benefit, please understand that, quote, there's a destiny that makes us brothers. None goes his way alone. All that we send into the lives of others comes back into our own, end quote. But when we talk about the motto, one God, one aim, one destiny, that's what that is implying. We either rise together or we fall together, but there won't be any individual victories. Either we win as a race or we lose as a race. As the only surviving graduate of the first class, it is important for me to protect the interests of those who preceded me into eternity. And knowing that there are forces that are trying to distort history, I hereby authorize Dr. Tony Martin, who has been recognized and appointed the authentic historian on the life and works of the Honorable Marcus Garvey by the Universal Negro Improvement Association and Convention, to publish the written document with the understanding that the right be preserved for future generations, which is the charge of the Honorable Marcus Garvey, founder. So Dr. Tony Martin, he is the recognized and appointed authentic historian on the life and works of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. He created a library, I forgot how many books, but it's the new Marcus Garvey Library. When it comes to, legitimate sources, Tony Martin is up there next to, if it's not from Marcus Garvey himself, Tony Martin would be one of the next most legitimate sources. I would put Amy Jocks up there as well, just because she was his wife. But from a organizational official standpoint, it was Dr. Tony Martin who was given that privilege from Honorable Charles L. James, who was the President General at the time. Let me hope that that into whomsoever's hands these lessons fall, that they may use them wisely. For in these lessons there is eternal life for Africans at home and abroad, and that they testify to God's greatest gift to our race in the person of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Proclaim it to the world, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. So that's the foreword written by Honorable Charles L. James. He was President General at the time, and he appointed Tony Martin to edit this document and put it together. But this document is actually authored by Marcus Mosiah Garvey himself. Even though the document wasn't released, I believe it was copyrighted in like 1985, and Garvey passed in 1940, but Garvey is still credited as the author of this text. All right, so let me go to the preface. I'll finish the preface and then we'll open up the floor for questions or anything. So preface. The Course of African Philosophy is a unique document. With the exception of his poetical works, it is the closest thing to a book that Marcus Garvey ever wrote. So, that's why I put this book. This is right underneath the religious text for me. But this is the highest book when it comes to Garvey information. I put this book right next to the UNIA-ACL Constitution. But these texts are of the highest importance when it comes to UNIA information. Yet 46 years after his death, it is being published here for the first time. It represents, as it were, the last political will and testament of a man who stands without equal in the history of the worldwide mobilization of African peoples. So that's what this course is. This is the last political will and testament of Marcus Garvey. So again, if we claim to be Garveyites, if others claim to be Garveyites, they should be carrying out the political will of Marcus Garvey, point blank, period, no exceptions. For Marcus Garvey did not merely organize the most massive Black movement in the history of the United States of America, he also organized the largest and most successful movement among African peoples in the Caribbean area. In fact, as a serious pan-Caribbean movement cutting across political and linguistic barriers, Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association has no serious challenger. Garvey's organization has an equally singular record in Africa, where it established itself oblivious of political and linguistic barriers in the European colonies of England, France, Belgium, and Portugal, as well as in the independent state of Liberia and the racist state of South Africa. In Central America, too, the UNIA spread with great rapidity from Mexico to Panama. In Canada, it entrenched itself coast to coast from British Columbia to Nova Scotia. Scattered Africa fell within Garvey's organizational genius in every far-flung corner, whether Brazil, Australia, or Berry Dock, Wales. Garvey lived from 1887 to 1940. His years of all-encompassing triumph coincided with his sojourn in the United States from 1916 to 1927, Garvey was only in the United States for 11 years, but his legacy, surpasses that time multiples over. His immigration to that country was, however, preceded by many long years of preparation for his life's work. Long years of study, travel, and organizational work, culminating in the founding of the Universal Negro Improvement Association in his Jamaican homeland in 1914. After his expulsion from the United States in 1927, Garvey's organization underwent a long and slow decline. As the chief struggled to hold together its fragmenting colossus from inadequate headquarters in Jamaica and later in England, it was in 1937, 10 years after his deportation from the United States, 2 years after relocating to England, and 3 years before his death, that Garvey introduced his course of African philosophy. And this is how the editor describes it. This is how editor describes the course. This was nothing less than a distillation of a lifetime of organizational experience. It contained a mixture of the techniques he himself had utilized to achieve success and an attempt to incorporate the hard lessons he had learned with the benefit of an unfortunate hindsight. That's a very important section, but in essence, this is not a theoretical course. This is not, theory of how Africans, can obtain liberation. This is practical information from a man who stands without equal in regards to organizing Africans globally. So, again, there's a lot of text, there's a lot of things out there about Garvey, and we as Garveyites claim to, know all of this good information, but do we know this course, and are we implementing the information from this course, and are we teaching this course to the next generation of leaders? That's what I want to, know as a Garveyite in this time. That's what I feel is of critical importance. I feel like this is part of the ball that's been dropped from generation to generation. It's that training and education. It's the lessons learned from the previous generation. So much of the Machiavellian quality of the document comes from this latter consideration. Garvey had experienced in a painful way the treacherous potential enveloped within human nature. If he had his life to live over, he seemed to be saying his would be a less trusting, more cautious approach to people. So we're getting Garvey's view from the end of his life. As an older man, approaching elder status, as Garvey has the ability to sit back, and look and reflect on his life, he's able to compile in this document lessons learned. And one of the things that he says is he would have been less trusting and more cautious, so we can't just call ourselves Garveyites and then try to do the exact same things that Garvey did in 1920. We should be learning from the lessons that Garvey learned in 1920, and we should be learning from the lessons that Garvey documented in 1937, 1938 through this course. The immediate purpose of the course of African philosophy. So the immediate purpose of this course was to train a cadre of UNIA leaders who would carry on the great work of the organization after Garvey's death. That's the specific purpose. And that is the time that we are in right now. We are trying to carry on the UNIA after Garvey's death. So we should definitely be utilizing this information, in my opinion, based on what I'm reading. Garvey designed the 22 lessons. Garvey, and watch, you got to watch these words with the lessons. And there's some hidden information in here. And that's why you have to, in my opinion, be taught by someone who was taught by someone who was taught by Garvey, basically. But it says Garvey designed the 22 lessons in London and took them to Canada, where from August 21st to 24th, 1937, He conducted a regional conference for North American members of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Garvey's initial vehicle for imparting his accumulated experience was the School of African Philosophy, which met immediately after this conference. So immediately after August 1937. So beginning in September 1937. For most of the month of September 1937, Garvey trained a select group of UNIA organizers from North American field. So the 1937 class was specifically from the North American field. They spent 12 or more hours together every day. They listened to Garvey's lectures, ate together, did their homework together. During the course of the month, each student was required to write out each lesson in his or her own handwriting. So that's one of the requirements that we at Division 421 still hold to. There's an examination. So as Charles L. James said, in every portion of the examination, he received a grade of E. So that implies that there was an examination. But Tony Martin also says that during the course of the month, each student was required to write out each lesson in his or her own handwriting. So for those that either can't do an examination, can't sit through the course of African philosophy, don't have time, don't have availability, or whatever it may be, the second option is to write out the course of African philosophy in your own handwriting, and that will be sufficient for a certification. But one of those two things, one of those two requirements have to be met. And if you really are serious about your Garveyism, you would do both of them. The course described by Garvey this course was described by Garvey. So this is how Garvey viewed the course. He described it as, quote, a most rigid system of training. So not just a system of education, but a system of training. Covered, and then Garvey says it covered over 42 subjects. Previously, it said Garvey designed the 22 lessons in London, and then down here, most rigid system of training covered over 42 subjects. Keep that in mind. So the actual course itself consists of over 42 subjects. Much of it remained unwritten. I'm gonna come back to that. For it was in the nature of a confidential in-house affair. So there was some information that was not written down. It was committed to memory. And again, you know, this is not just a book that you can pick up, you know, from Amazon, read it and say you've been trained by Garvey. There are over 42 subjects in this book, but when you look at the table of contents, stops at lesson 22. So what that implies is that there are over 20 hidden lessons in this text. And, you know, it's not just, you're not just gonna be able to read the book and get all of the lessons, basically. So it's advised that you go through the course. All right, now where was I at? Most rigid, even the 22, okay. Covered over 42 subjects, much of it remained unwritten, for it was in the nature of a confidential in-house affair. Even the 22 written lessons reproduced here were guarded jealously from indiscriminate circulation. So course was taught in 1937 and it wasn't published until 85. So what's that? I don't know how many years. I want to say 18, but I know that's wrong. Like 28, something like that. But for several years, this information, these lessons were guarded by private individuals. And we got to think about why that's the case. But I would imply that they didn't want this information to get into the wrong hands. And the possibilities of what could happen if this information got into the wrong hands, and also the possibility of this information were to get lost to time. So we have to give credit to Honorable Charles L. James for preserving this and bringing it to light, such that in 2022, we have the actual course of African philosophy that Garvey himself authored. Almost finished. Almost finished. I think I just one more paragraph. Yeah. Garvey's, no, it's not. It's more than one paragraph, but hang tight. Expulsion. Garvey's overriding concern was to develop within his organizers a fierce Afrocentric view of the world. So Afrocentric should be the central view when it comes to solutions or problem solving for us Garveyites. He accepted as given the fact that the white race had imposed its viewpoint on the world, and he thought that African people would have to adopt similar strategies in their own behalf. The race first position would tolerate no permanent allies from among other groups. Whites were to be manipulated where possible, but the propaganda was to be avoided and counteracted. Under no circumstances were they to obtain positions of influence or control over Black organizations. The course reported the Boston Chronicle after an interview with Garvey would instill, quote, an independent outlook, a philosophy entirely Negroid and or African, void of anything that will subjugate the mind of the Negro, end quote. So when we look at, our Black leaders and what we consider Black progress in today's time, I have to ask, have these Black leaders gone through a Garveyite training? And are these solutions that our Black leaders provide and promote, are they Afrocentric solutions? Are they race-first solutions? And if they're not, we have to take responsibility to educate the next generation. In the context of a confidential conclave, and with his lifetime of experience behind him, Garvey would be much less guarded in his speech than would have been the case otherwise. While forcefully attempting to lead his people out of the domination of the white group, he could accordingly, frankly, admire their methods. Whites knew exactly what they wanted, and in the final analysis, subordinated much else to their pursuit of racial self-interest. He says, quote, never swallow wholly what the white man writes or says without first critically analyzing it, end quote. He taught that in lesson 1. But this did not mean that the African race should eschew the white group's methods. He says, quote, things that may not be true, quote unquote, things that may not be true, he suggested in the same lesson, can be made so if you repeat them long and often enough. Therefore, always repeat the statements that will give your race status and advantage. That is how the white man has built up his system of superiority. So when we talk about race first is a direct psychological, philosophical, or whatever you want to call it. It's a direct counter to the system of white superiority or any other racial superiority. Race first is supposed to, put the ideology within us that our people and our race should be first in anything that we do. Garvey in his heyday had to contend with white self-interest and opportunism from both right and left. He simultaneously praised Lenin and Trotsky for their work in the Soviet Union and resisted the unprincipled attempts of the Communist Party of the USA to bore from within his organization. Here in the course of African philosophy, he presented his students with a rare evaluation of Karl Marx. Communism, he said, was founded principally on the theory of Karl Marx, who knew very little about Negroes and who taught and wrote less about them. Communism seeks to put government in the hands of an ignorant white mass who have not been able to destroy their natural prejudices toward Negroes and other non-white people. When the question of Jews, as on the question of communists, Garvey's race-first position led him to a duality of attitude. In traditional Afro-American vein, he praised the Jews for their group solidarity and resented their positions of influence and power in certain economic and political aspects of Black life. He himself had come into contact with the Jews at various times and with both good and bad results. He showed considerable pique during his trial for alleged mail fraud in 1923, where the presiding judge, Julian Mack, happened to be an important figure in North American Zionism. For the most part, there should be few surprises in these lessons for those already familiar with Garvey's ideology. What we find here is his standard fare of race first, whether in religion, literature, historical studies, intergroup relations, or in any other area, self-reliance and nationhood. What is new and fascinating is the tone of many of these utterances, coming as they do near the end of his life and in a confidential setting. So again, going back to, there had been essays and speeches of Garvey circulated up until 1937. But we all must understand, and this text talks about diplomacy, and a good example would be Booker T. Washington and how he's been, how people see him. But the things that our teachers and leaders can say during a speech or during a public appearance or in a crowd or audience isn't always their true beliefs. And that's what Garvey is saying with this course. This course, you get the behind the scenes. It's not he's not trying to please anybody. He's not trying to appease anybody. He's giving it to you, straight, no cut. And that's what makes this course different from anything else that Garvey had previously produced. It's uncensored, basically. Equally in new emphasis, though not in substance, is his insistent advocate. Let me go back. Equally new in emphasis, though not in substance, is his insistent advocacy of discipline. Garvey emerges here beneath the flamboyance usually associated with his name, beneath the genius for organizing, beneath the oratorical eloquence for which he was legendary, as an advocate of hard work, singleness of purpose, and self-discipline. The leader must strive to master his shortcoming, he says. The race must strive for excellence. Quote, the greatest men and women in the world burn the midnight lamp, end quote. Nor does he spare the lazy and unmotivated within his own group. Like a Booker T. Washington or a Malcolm X or Elijah Muhammad, Garvey was not one to cover up the shortcoming of his own people. He says, quote, the majority of Negroes are ignorant, end quote. He says in lesson 21, but the intent, as always, is positive. Quote, as other people were willing to sacrifice their time and even their lives to Christianize our race, we must exercise patience and time to civilize our people, end quote. Garvey cannot any more than anybody else escape totally from the confines of his time. There is much assorted homely advice on diet, grooming, and love, among other things. Some of this is timeless, but some seems dated and passé from the perspective of 4 decades later. The lessons are not without their unexpected asides of dry humor either. Quote, never try to make a speech on a hungry stomach, he warns. He says, quote, you may faint and die before you are finished, end quote. The first course of African philosophy was followed by examinations held on September 23rd, 1937. And again, that's why September and the end of September is so important. Today is September 25th, 2022, but we're looking back in history. First examinations were held on September 23rd, 1937. 10 students were successful. They were Arthur C. Moore of Toronto, Charles L. James of Gary, Indiana, James R. Stewart of Cleveland, Ohio, Thomas W. Harvey of Philadelphia, Nathaniel Grissom of Chicago, Miss Sarah Richardson Isaacs of Philadelphia, Miss Ethel Waddell of Chicago, Miss Teresa E. Young of Cincinnati, Miss Eleanor White of Chicago, and Abraham R. Roberts of Toronto. Joseph L. Gray of Charleston, Missouri, quote, did not graduate, but was continued as a student, end quote. This first group of graduates was immediately sent out as UNIA commissioners to the North American field. Some of them in due course instructed classes in the course of African philosophy. C.L. James taught the course in Gary, St. Louis, in Gary, St. Louis, and New Orleans. James Stewart offered the course in Cleveland. 3 of the 10, Stewart, Harvey, and James, in turn occupied the organization's highest post, that of President General. So out of the 10 graduates of the first class, 3 of those graduates went on to become President General. In 1938, Garvey introduced the lessons as a correspondence course that he conducted from his London headquarters. His Black Man magazine published the names of 7 graduates in its June 1939 number. 4 were from the United States, with one each from Nigeria, Uganda, and South Africa. They were Benjamin W. Jones of Philadelphia, J.O. Nwanolu of Onitsha, Nigeria, Mrs. H.T. McNary of Detroit, D.S. Mosuke of Kampala, Uganda, Miss Keturah Paul of New York City, H. Iletentro of Cape Province, South Africa, and Miss E.M. Collins of New York City. Names of additional graduates promised for the next issue of the Black Man, but no further issues were published. Garvey died the following year on June 10th, 1940. The School of African Philosophy came at the end of many years of UNIA efforts in the field of education. The organization's original aims and objects of 1914 included the establishment of educational institutions. Garvey's trip to the United States in 1916 was intended initially as a fundraising tour for UNIA's projected cultural and industrial school in Jamaica. At various times during the 1920s, the organization ran a Booker T. Washington University in Harlem, New York, a Liberty University in Claremont, Virginia, and in-service courses for UNIA civil servants. Branches in several countries ran elementary and secondary schools. Famous educators and scholars such as Hubert H. Harrison, J.A. Rogers, Carter G. Woodson, and many more were associated with the organization at one time or another. UNIA schools had always had the same ultimate purpose, namely the presentation of an Afrocentric perspective. The School of African Philosophy had itself been in the making from as early as 1934. In that year, the UNIA's 7th International Convention of Negro Peoples of the World, meeting in Kingston, Jamaica, authorized the establishment of, quote, a college for the purpose of training leaders who are to supervise the work in different parts of the world. Again, we have to continue to ask, if this has been certified, this has been agreed upon, we have to look for it, we have to find it. If we can't find it, then we have to make it. Intelligence, said Garvey, in the course of African philosophy rules the world and ignorance carries the burden. The intelligence of which he spoke was not merely book learning, but the self-interested common sense which the race seemed to lack. He expressed it in this way in a fictitious father-son dialogue in 1935. He says, quote, education, boy, is a mighty force. It is the weapon of human control. If you can educate a people in the idea that you have, they will react to your satisfaction, whether the education is as a propaganda is right or wrong, end quote. It is fitting that the UNIA's last educational endeavor in Garvey's lifetime should have been the first that he was able to conduct from start to finish. Garvey says, quote, I have given them all I know, he declared to the people of Detroit in 1937. And he also said, quote, I am trying to make everyone a Marcus Garvey personified, end quote. And that is the preface written by Dr. Tony Martin, November 10th, 1935, Wellesley, Massachusetts. So I will stop there. And again, this coming Tuesday, we will officially start officers training for Division 421. We've opened it up to all officers in the UNIA. So I expect other divisions to participate with us, but this is the priority for me. And this is the priority that I see for the division for the coming months. So I will open the floor for any questions or comments in regards to course of African philosophy.
This is only for the officers.
For those, I mean, it does imply there's an implication that it's open to everyone, but for those that wish to be in a position of leadership, that's what I would say. So even if you're not an officer, if you aspire to be an officer, you may participate in the course. But it's not for your everyday, rank and file member. It's not. There are some things some opinions about Garvey, some statements that Garvey gives that can be off-putting for an individual that's not, prepared for that type of information. So it's not an introductory course.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, well, we're not going to belabor anything. That was the topic for tonight's meeting, training and education, and the 6-month training course for qualification for high offices. If there aren't any questions or comments, we'll move into member share. Let me see who we got. See if our lady president joined. So we'll go into member share. As always, brothers, we have to be good listeners. So we like to hear from our sisters first. Let me see if there are any sisters on the call. Greetings, CPM member 3094 in Suffolk, Virginia, Sister Mary. Sister Mary, you there? Sister Mary. Okay, we'll come back to Sister Mary. UNI member 284, Sister Aziza, Attorney Emotep, and Sister Aziza, did she want to say anything?
Let me ask her. Hold on one second.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, no. I didn't get I would like to, but I didn't get it into the first part of the meeting.
Okay, she doesn't have anything to say, John.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Emotep. Let me jump back. Mary, Aziza. That is our sisters. We jump over to our brothers. Bring in UNI member 390, our first vice president, Brother Macias.
Race First family, this is Brother Macias at your service. Just wanted to first, I guess I'm comment on the course on African philosophy. Excited about it, and definitely thank all those who. I'm glad President John said what he said about those who are wishing to be officers to take the course. I did participate in the course last year, and I'm excited about this year, going through it even again. Right now, I am currently in Philadelphia at the international headquarters, and where we had an event last Friday where the President General came to Philadelphia. And this event was located with an organization called the Peace Park, who received 14 lots from the city through adverse possession and turned those into community farms. And for me, this model of receiving property is one that, we definitely can adopt in 421. The great thing about it is the partnership with President General coming down last Friday and speaking there, and the brother who started that organization was formed. And we are putting together a template and a process to be able to receive property and from someone who's already done it, who's already, we had a meeting a few months back about property, which was mostly off of theory and information. But now we have someone just like the course of African philosophy who has done it. And we are excited about that and excited to bring that model on what it takes to not only receive property, but to be able to hold on to it. They were raided twice by the city of Philadelphia trying to get them out of the property, but they were able to defend it. And they were there for 10 years now. So feeding ourselves is always important. If we are going to depend on ourselves and be self-reliant, we first have to know how to feed ourselves. So with President General having Liberty Farms and us partnering with someone who not only received land and turned part portion of it to farmland, but they also seized 2 buildings that remain standing on those out of those 14 lots and turned those into office spaces and educational facilities as well. So these are models of how to be a nation with land, because a nation is no nation unless we have land. And each individual home, each individual property, each individual person that we bring upon the UNIA gives us an opportunity to have land and plots of land that we can grow resources from, and which is the most important thing. And that first focus being food, which is one of the major focuses of the UNIA right now from the parent body level, to be able to create what we call small Liberty Farms so that we can depend on ourselves for the food that we eat every day. So that's important work that we must also adopt here in 421, to be able to not only receive property just for the food, but for our people's all everyday needs for housing, even properties for manufacturing. The principle that I'll close with this that I share and that I got from the brother is that no nation or people or persons own the land. The land comes from God, is given by God, and it's given to us to cultivate or distribute for the resourcefulness and use of our people, and protect the borders that we seize for ourselves and our people. And we have to be diligent about doing that, because we cannot continue to rely on other races to give us the resources and the peace of mind that we need. So I'm excited about continue doing this work and continue to serve and bringing all the models of everything that works to 421 so that we can strengthen Atlanta, because the HGC is coming to Atlanta in April. And I know, I won't say I believe, I know that this event will catastrophically put a charge into the UNIA, where we'll go into 2023 to make a racial empire that the sun will never set. So first.
First, thank you, First Vice President. Great report. I did want to take a second to ask the floor because I like where your mindset is, and we talk about goals, plans, and execution. We have a goal, we're putting a plan together, and then we want to be able to execute. I wanted to open the floor. I don't, just to make it clear amongst ourselves. Is there anybody here that is willing to lead or support agricultural development for the division? The way I'm going is Brother Macias is helping to acquire the property and the land. Once we get the land or property, we should, have a plan to, as Brother Macias, First Vice President said, cultivate that land. So, I don't think we should wait until we get property to start developing agricultural plans. So I just wanted to put it out there. Do we have any agricultural experts on the call now that would be willing to support agricultural projects in Atlanta? Okay.
Or know anyone as well. I'll kind of add that. Know anyone. We should be one thing that President General pointed out at convention. We should be bringing our friends into the UNIA too. So if you know someone out there who's doing agriculture also as well, please come about the UNIA and tell them that about us committed to creating institutions for our people. And I'm sure they'll
Brother Cornelius, our second vice president, he may have some contacts and information. He's been manning our agriculture department, but yeah, this is not something that we should have to pull teeth, to get the information for. We are nation builders. We are quote unquote Garveyites. And we also should know there's no culture without agriculture. So, if we're struggling to, list or have individuals that specialize in agriculture, we're in a tough position as a people and as a race. I just want that to be understood. But thank you, First Vice President, Brother Macias. We will keep it moving. Next, brother, I want to bring in UNIA member 165, our Legal Defense Committee Coordinator, Attorney Imhotep.
Greetings, Africans.
Greetings, Attorney Imhotep.
Nothing much to share other than I'm learning more about Forsyth County here and their history.
Okay.
It being so close to, Fulton County, the Metroplex. My concern is if I'm passing through trying to get home, or you need to know what the environment is.
Mm-hmm.
And I did check the present population of the county. There are more Hispanics and Asians than there are Africans presently in Forsyth County. And if anyone from Georgia, knows the history, please, give me a call. Let me know. I'm trying to learn, and this is something new, and we all should know. Thank you. That's it. Race first.
Race first. Thank you, Attorney Imhotep. For those that aren't aware, I just put a map up. Forsyth County is north of Georgia. On what's that? Is it 85? Oh, 85 over here. So north of Georgia, looks like Route 19. But it's an area that we pass through from time to time, and I got to look at the history. I don't know if that's the area where I know Oprah did a special on a racist county in Georgia, and I feel like it was Forsyth, but some issues of race out in Forsyth County. That's what Attorney Imhotep was referring to. Okay, thank you, Attorney Imhotep. Next brother will bring in UNIA member number 2, our division treasurer, President Ross Marvin. President Ross Marvin, how you doing? You on mute? Okay. Ross Marvin? We will have to come back to Ross Marvin. Okay. We'll come back to Ross Marvin. We'll jump over to UNIA member 172 out of New York, Dr. Shams. Greetings, Dr. Shams.
Race first.
Race first, how you doing?
Very good. The thing I liked about the speech, the lesson tonight, is the way that we pass down tradition. Tradition is very important, but not everybody knows how to pass down a tradition just because of the word tradition. Things can break up, happen, separate, and then we go into that area of faltering and failing that we don't want to be in. But as long as we can take lesson on how to make things a tradition of what we're doing, then we're going to see we're well ahead of where we are trying to go. I like the cohesiveness, of the reading tonight. In that, it was stated just for our race, no other race, our race. Yes, I know that's hard to maintain at times, but the more advanced we can become for ourselves, the more we can ascertain and be sure that, we keep our race together. In our activities, our organization and government is just for our race peacefully, The other thing I wanted to get to was that I have put, God willing, I have put some of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan speeches on my website to try to bolster it up, so that, people go there and look for certain information, and whether they find it or not, they can learn something there. It also has like meaningful lyrics, music from the 1970s that people can meditate on as well. And with that, I have different things that I like: history, law, ways of trying to make money and so forth. Honestly. And the name of that website is Not Helpful USA Legislations People.bravesites.com. I'll put it in the Zoom chat. That's Not Helpful USA Legislations People.bravesites.com. Peace and race first.
Race first. Thank you, Dr. Shams. I wanted to comment on something that you said, very important, but when you talk about the passing on of traditions, rites of passage, things like that, and even when we talk about, us as Africans and a race, the thing that comes to my mind is an actual race with a baton, but that's what this course represents. That's what some of our rites of passage represents. The individuals themselves, so Garvey himself had to put together a course that the next generation could pick up. And when you think about people running in a race, a marathon race, with the baton, the most fragile part is the time when they're passing the baton from the person behind to the person in front. And when that's happening, the person that has the baton first kind of has to slow down a little bit. And the person that's getting the baton has to speed up. But my point is, we have to have individuals that can pass on the information, one, but we also have to have individuals that are ready to receive the information. And that's where we as individuals have to look at ourselves. Are we ready to receive the information? You know, are we ready to carry the baton of the UNIA and the legacy of greatness for our race? You know, but that's where we are, and that's where we need to be. We have to take, it's our time to take the baton. And not only do we have to hold it, but we have to be ready to pass it on to the next. So we have to be preparing and developing the next generation to carry on that baton. But we as a race have to be better about that. Not just individuals, but as a race as a whole. But thank you, Dr. Shams, again.
President John, got to say one thing real quick. That was the greatest analogy I ever heard, and that's why I'm glad you
Thank you, First Vice President. But yes, I mean it's a race, man. You know, and we gotta be ready to take the baton as well as pass it on. Okay. We'll come back to President Ross Marvin at the end. I want to jump over to UNI member 97 out of Chicago, Brother Stephen. Greetings, Brother Stephen. Brother Stephen, you there? Okay. Brother Stephen, all right. A couple more on the Zoom, and then we'll jump over to the conference line. Next, we'll bring in UNI member Annandale, Virginia, Brother Art. Greetings, Brother Art.
Greetings, family. I don't have anything to share at this time. I just want to continue learning. Thank you.
No problem. Brother Art, I'm gonna send you I'll send you the invitation to the class. It starts Tuesday. I think we'll start at 8 p.m. It's 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. It'll be every Tuesday.
Okay.
It'll go until about February, end of February.
Okay.
Thank you, brother.
Race first.
Race first. All right, that's Brother Art. Next, Brother Michael. Greetings, Brother Michael. Michael G. Harris. Brother Michael, you there? Brother Michael not there. All right, we'll come back to Brother Michael. Let me jump over to the conference line. UNI member 317, our youth division coordinator, Brother James. Greetings, Brother James. Brother James, you there?
Yeah, my bad. I had the phone be race first, everybody.
Race first.
I don't have too much to say. Thank you, Brother President, for keeping these meetings going and keeping us organized. I know it's a lot. I know it entails a lot. So, you know, I definitely want to let you know that you appreciate it. I'm sure everybody feels the same way. I want to say, Brother Mason made a good point earlier. We were talking about that farm, and he was saying, you know, make sure we bring in friends with us, you know, showing what we're doing and everything. I think that's real important, especially from a recruiting aspect, because, you know, the division only grows if we stay engaged with, you know, the youth, and we're building that up. And I got Brother John or you or Oral Mason, y'all can give me some information later on. I like to bring my kids by the farm, you know, because I'm very, you know, my kids are with me a lot. You know, I think that's a good thing to make sure, you know, we're in great shape now youth for what the division is doing. I'm going to be coming up, and Brother John and others, we can partner up and see, but I think, you know, from now going forward, we need to be coming up with some youth engaging activities to make sure that we're keeping our presence felt, not only just within the community, but we normalizing our division and presence these youth,
Yes, sir.
from the elementary age on up to, high school and even our college students. We're definitely going to have to increase our visibility because, we geographically, our division is in a very unique place and capable place.
Yes, sir.
And so, keeping that in mind, we can do a lot with that. If we just come together and bring ideas to the table and, like how you doing, but John, if we follow your form and fashion, committing to it and seeing it through. So I definitely think that's something we should do at some point, maybe by the next meeting here on the Zoom, on the phone. We have some coming together with some different ideas. I'm definitely coming up with some. I've been going to some of the schools around Atlanta, read my book, teach me about Garvey and Red, Black, Green, tell me what it means. And what I did on Marcus Garvey's birthday, there's a school on the west side of Atlanta, Chicago Elementary. I donated a copy of the book to basically the second, third, fourth grade, and fifth graders around the school. I made sure everybody had a copy, and the school was very receptive and very appreciative and gracious of that, not just having, not just the kids having the books, but, having the author come through. But from our division standpoint, that definitely increases the visibility and notoriety of Marcus Garvey. Because I can guarantee you, you pick any school in Atlanta or around this country, you go in there and ask your average second, third, fourth, any grader, you ask them who Marcus Garvey is, you're not gonna have many hands raised. So
Yep.
We're gonna come up with a way. I'll devise a plan, but if anybody wants to, I'm gonna devise a plan for anybody who would like to sponsor a book for some of these schools, sponsor books for some of the schools, find a way to create a fund for that because I love giving them out, but it's not always feasible. But we're definitely trying to increase the visibility of Marcus Garvey and the UNIA, what he contributed, and and letting these children know and young adults know that there's still a presence here. That, we depend on them to continue to grow.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's all I really had to share. I want to again say, Ray, first, and thank you to everybody for being on the call. Brother John, you're doing a great job. Brother Mason and everybody else. Ray first.
Race first. Thank you, Brother James. Yes, just stay on top of myself as well as First Vice President to make sure that you have the support that you need to engage our youth. We've already discussed and committed, our resources as well as energy to make sure that we continue to keep our youth engaged. Brother James, you're doing a great job of staying on top of that. I will say, but like I said, I'll just need constant reminders. We're trying to make sure the finances are okay. Brother Macy's is working on the business aspects and business funding of the organization. Lady President, we're trying to get more sisters on board. Baba James is helping with our defense of the organization. But it's just a lot going on, and I don't want you to think that we're overlooking the youth, but I do need your support to keep us engaged, and don't hesitate to let us know what you need from a manpower or financial standpoint. We will have our next executive meeting October 1st. That's a Saturday. And at that time, I will, that's when I like for us to come together as executives and express what we see as our priorities, and we can come together, work together, and make sure we have the same level of priorities. But thank you again, Brother James, and please continue with the work that you're doing with the youth. Oh, and one other thing, the farm that Brother Omasis was talking about is in Philadelphia. We're trying to duplicate that example here in Atlanta, but we got to find the property, and then we got to, find the support and the expertise. So, all right. Thank you, Brother James, again. That was Brother James on the conference line, and I just logged out of the conference line. Couple more brothers. And again, that's why, when we look at our attendance, we're lacking when it comes to the sisters. Mama Amina has been on top of me about trying to help get our sisters engaged for over a year. We were supposed to have a meeting this month of September. I had some stuff come up, and then we pushed it back to October, but now Mama Mina's out of town, so hopefully that's something we can discuss at the executive meeting. That is important. The youth as well as our sisters, we just got a lot of things we need to improve upon. All right, let me just go back over the brothers that missed out and the sisters that missed out. Sister Mary, are you there? Sister Mary? Okay. President Ross Marvin, are you there? President Ross Marvin. Brother Stephen out of Chicago. Brother Stephen. And final, Brother Michael Harris. Brother Michael Harris.
Oh, how you doing? Sorry, my microphone was off. Race first. Good afternoon, family. How you doing?
Race first. How you doing, Brother Michael? We in member share. So anything you'd like to share with the family?
No, I came in very late. I got the last bit of it, so I'm just gonna sit back and listen and do like I do. Okay?
No problem. Thank you for being here, Brother Michael. Oh, and I meant to say this after Brother James spoke, but make sure member dues. You know, we have some righteous endeavors, you know, when it comes to supporting the youth, educating the youth, organizing our people. We believe these are righteous endeavors, training our cadre of leaders, but all of this stuff requires resources. So if you are not an active dues paying member, please pay your dues so that you are an active member. And if you are an active member and you just like to help out the organization, feel free to donate to the organization. Best ways to contribute would be, one is Cashapp, our Cashapp $ UNIA 421 fund, or PayPal, paypal.me/UNIA 421. But yeah, all donations and dues are appreciated and welcome. Were there any other comments or discussions that anybody would like to bring up before we move to close?
Yes, Brother John, thank you. This is Brother Imhotep. I forgot to add, we just celebrated a unglorious anniversary here. September 22nd, 1906 is the Atlanta massacre they had here downtown. They're saying it was near Little 5 Points there. It lasted for 2 or 3 days, and it was just one of the many race massacres here close to home, downtown, Midtown Atlanta. So just keeping folks abreast of what we've gone through here in this country, this place we're in right here. That's it. Race first. Thank you.
Race first. Thank you, Attorney Imhotep, for that history reminder. Anything else before we move to close? Sister Aziza, is that you?
Yes, this is just one question. You know, something about doing an organization about the women, the sisters.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, like I said, Mama Amina, our lady president, has been adamant about trying to get our sisters together for a meeting or just just to have a discussion, but to get our sisters re-engaged. There's two things that we have to do. Well, it's pretty simple. Well, one, we got to figure out a date. It'll probably be, at this point, I'm thinking it's going to be in November because we're doing Ancestors Day at the end of October. So the only other day that we would do it prior to November would be October 15th. But I need to get with our lady president, find a date. And once we get a date, then I'll have to go through our texting system and isolate the females and send a mass text only to the sisters of the organization, but not to the brothers.
Okay.
But
Still put my phone number.
I've got your information, my sister Ziza.
Okay, then. Race first.
Race first. Thank you. And last thing from me, as I said, I had a family emergency that I've been dealing with. I've still got the list of brothers and sisters that need their Black government IDs that requested them at Marcus Garvey Day. I spoke with President Ross Marvin earlier this week or last week, because today is Sunday, it's a new week. He will still be producing our Black government IDs. I just need to get him the information. So bear with me. I still have the list of names, and President Ross Marvin is going to do it. We've got the pictures. I just need a little bit more time to get those processed. So just want to give an update on that. Anything else before we move to close? It is 6:55. Okay. I can't think of anything else. Only other thing. Well, let me just do this really quick. So, y'all know I like to keep everyone aware of everything that's going on. I've been getting emails from the parent body. One important one is the orientation course. So Division 421, we have our officers training. It'll be a 6-month course. The parent body has a orientation course, and it is a 4-month course. It started yesterday. I missed the first one. I did send this to our officers to let them know, but if there's anybody, Brother Art, did you want to attend the orientation? Did you want this information?
Yeah.
Okay. Is anybody else, officers, you should have it, but is anybody else that is interested in participating in the UNIA orientation? Okay, I ain't gonna hold on that too long. I think that's the only big thing. Yeah, that's the only big thing. 429 had an in-person event. That's in Chicago. Ain't nobody, y'all ain't worried about that. And yeah, that's it. I think that's the big thing. Orientation. Yeah, that's the only big thing from the parent body. So, all right, with that, one more time, President Ross Marvin, you there? Last call. Okay, last call. Anyone that did not get a chance to share before we move to close? Last call. All right. I ain't gonna hold y'all. Get some rest. Sunday evening, 6:57. So we will close out with the model review organization. You can come off mute. Repeat after me. One God.
One God.
One aim.
One aim.
One destiny.
One destiny.
Africa.
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 For the Africans.
For the
Africans.
those at home,
those that
Those
home,
at home
and those abroad.
and those
those
abroad.
abroad.
Race first.
Family. Y'all have a
Race
good
first.
evening. Have a great
Race first.